Hi, everybody. I'm Alan Freedman.
And I'm Michael Burd. And this is the first of our interviews with people who have recently been to Israel and have had a story to tell.
Yeah, the war in Gaza has triggered a surge in Jewish connectedness with the state of Israel and a desire to help in some way.
And most people are not able just to pack up and go for a short time. But one person who did do this happens to be my son-in-law, Daniel Monheit. And we're going to hear directly from him about his trip.
Yes, so Dan Monheit is founder and CEO of Hard Hat, a creative agency built for challenger brands. Hard Hat's clients include Barbie, AMP, Kogan, and the TAC. Dan's expertise in marketing and human behaviour have seen him present to thousands of people, both locally and at major international events, including South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. He is also host of the Bad Decisions podcasts, and they have listeners in more than 70 countries. He's the author of The Why, an Amazon bestseller, and has been invited to collaborate on content projects with Google, Facebook, that's Meta, and car sales. Dan is on the Victorian board of the JNF and regularly travels to Israel with his family. Dan, thanks for joining us. Great to have you.
Thank you, guys. Great to be on the show. Finally, after all these years, I got an invite. All I had to do was go to Israel in the middle of a war.
That's right. Daniel, you've got a young family. You run your own thriving business. It must have been hard for you to decide to get on a plane, go to Israel to volunteer. What actually pushed you over the line to make the trip?
First credits where it's due. To say I have a supportive wife would be an understatement. She was so keen for me to go. I actually was just checking my life insurance policy on my way out. Like she was basically pushing me out the door to go. So look, we do go every year in July. We have a very, very strong connection to Israel. And the easiest thing in the world would have been not to go. Like there is no 10-day period in my calendar where there's no meetings and no client commitments and no school commitments. But July just felt too long to wait. And so in December, we just looked at the calendar. We found a date for the end of January, and I just blocked out my calendar and I booked in the flights, and off I went.
How long did you go for, Dan?
So it was a lightning trip. I left here on the 21st of Jan, came back on the 31st. So I had about nine days on the ground total.
Okay.
Did you join an organization? I mean, how did you know where and what you were going to be doing?
Yeah, so it was a very interesting trip because now some programs are starting to come up. I think, JNF and UIA and lots of organizations are starting to put on structured programs. This was my window. I couldn't wait. So I just decided I'm just going to go. And I spoke to some other people who had done similar things. And one of the many, many incredible things that have come out of this whole situation is this unbelievable network and structure of WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups that exist that post opportunities every day for different types of volunteering opportunities. So I knew on the first day I was going to turn up and I was going to go and do volunteering at the Tel Aviv Expo. So this is a volunteering gig that is open all day, every day, 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. to basically help sort and repack the millions of items that have been donated for the 250,000 displaced families in Israel. So they constantly need help. So I knew I was just going to turn up there on the first day. And, I was like the only person under 60. So they just had me schlepping boxes, which was fine. And from there, I knew I'd just work it out. And what happens is every day I just check my messages, and tomorrow there's a bus leaving at 6 a.m. to go to an eggplant farm. And the next day there's cooking required at a kitchen in Florentine. And I just 12 hours at a time worked it out.
Dan, did they know you were going to arrive, or did you plan it in advance, or did you just rock up on the morning that you arrived there?
So Tel Aviv Expo, nope, you just turn up with, and there's 50 other random people that just turn up every day as well from all over the world. With some of the programs, you have to register because to do things like the agricultural trips down south, there's a bus and there's a minimum number of people that they need. So a lot of the agricultural work is organized by a group called Leket. And they you just register. They need your details for insurance purposes, and then you just turn up at the spot, get on the bus, and make your way down.
Yeah, and did you have a choice of activities to do?
The agricultural work was, this is what's happening today. Today is avocados. Tomorrow is green peppers. The next day is something else. But within the days, some days you could go and do schlepping, some days you could go and do cooking, some days you could go and work at Hostage Square selling merchandise. So it was a bit of a choose your own adventure.
We don't have a lot of time, but I want you to give us your impression. You went to a couple of places. First of all, you went to the site of the music festival, and you went to some of the kibbutzes that were where the massacres took place. Can you just give us a few places that really stuck in your mind, even if it feels uncomfortable?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of when I went, there were three purposes I had. One was to show solidarity. The second was to volunteer, and the third was to bear witness. And so to actually go and see with my own eyes and to be able to come back and talk from firsthand experience is one of the key reasons I went. So it's obviously difficult to describe. A lot of it was so bad that my brain just almost wouldn't let me accept that that's what I was seeing. It just felt like I was walking through a movie set a lot of the time. So, in order, one of the first things I went to was the site of the Nova massacre. And just to walk through there and get a sense of how beautiful the place was, and like what a beautiful location for a dance party. And you can just see how thousands of people, young, beautiful people, could have been dancing there. And then how terrifying it is to consider how wide open the space is. And you just put yourself in this situation where you're in this wide open space and people are just coming, not just from all sides, but from the sky as well. And you just start to get a sense of the horror and the carnage that must have happened there. They've got a memorial set up with photos of all of the people who were killed and abducted from there. I was there just after Tu B'Shvat, and so they had just planted a new garden with one tree for every victim. And you just got a sense of the scale of it. I think 360 people were murdered there, and it's just 360 beautiful young faces, people having the time of their life. It was just harrowing. From there, I went to a kibbutz called Kfar Aza, where Kfar Aza has sort of been set up. It's not been set up for tourism, but it has been set up for people to come through. So there are military there. As we got there, there was a military spokesperson, a young lady, I think her name was Maya, who did an incredible job of telling us what had happened here and telling us that you are here to bear witness and you have to tell the world what happened here. And what I saw there was a level of destruction and devastation that I could not imagine. I didn't realize, and what was pointed out to us was most of the destruction and devastation of what we saw was actually from what they call the second wave. So this kibbutz has, 700 people, had 700 people living there. I don't have my notes in front of me, but somewhere between 100 and 150 were murdered or abducted on that one day. And the first wave was these Hamas terrorists that came through and blew things up and murdered and raped people. The vast majority of the destruction that we saw, though, was from the second wave, which was when hundreds and hundreds of, she didn't know what to call them, whether we call them civilians or whether we call them terrorists, but this is non-Hamas people.
They were Gazans,
storming through the kibbutz, blowing things up, dragging bodies back for ransoms, chopping heads off, stealing anything that wasn't bolted down. I mean, everything from flat screen TVs to lingerie, and the level of destruction that these people cause is just unfathomable. And, a number of years ago, I went through the concentration camps of Auschwitz, and I remember just feeling this clinical efficiency and the coldness of those places. And what I saw here was the antithesis of that. It was just savagery that you just can't imagine happened. And finally, the third one I went to was Kibbutz Nir Oz, which is where my great aunt has been living since 1965. And she was the one who was captured and taken to Gaza as a hostage. She was there for 49 days, but thankfully returned in the first big wave of returned hostages. And Nir Oz has not really been set up very well for people to come through. And when I went there, I had sort of my second or third cousin who's taken over as kind of manager of the kibbutz take me through. And this is a kibbutz where 400 people live there. 100 of them were murdered or abducted on the day. So that is a quarter of the population. And it was more raw than Kfar Aza, and every house had a story, and he knew all of the stories. And I walked through these houses with him. And as I walked through the houses, I'm stepping over toys and children's pajamas and just, you know, I'm teary even just thinking about it now. And this was the kibbutz where so many of the things that I'd heard about and read about actually happened. So this is where my great aunt was abducted from. This is where the Bebas family was. This is where the girl in the Harry Potter costume, who I think had a Down syndrome or something, who was murdered by her kidnappers for slowing them down. This is where she lived. I saw the house where, you know, sensitive listening content, but, you know, where the grandmother who was murdered and then set on fire and then live streamed to her own Facebook account with her own phone. I saw the house where that happened. I saw houses where it took archaeological and forensic experts 6 weeks to find enough DNA on ashes to determine that the residents of houses had actually been in there when they were detonated. I just saw things and I heard things and I smelt things that will never leave me.
Isn't your cousin's former husband still a hostage? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Gadi.
Dan, what sort of reaction did you get from Israelis?
It was quite overwhelming. They, by and large, could not believe that somebody would come from Australia for 9 days just to be there. And, you know, they are a very strong, very resilient people, but they were quick to show their appreciation and their affection. And, you know, I already had connections with my family there, but they've just become so much stronger, and they really appreciate it. They appreciated small things like just coming there to spend money in cafes that have no customers, and they appreciated the actual work of going and picking fruit that's otherwise going to go to rot, and they appreciated the, you know, emotional and philosophical signal of actually standing with Israel in Israel.
Yeah, Michael.
Just lastly from me anyway. You've been quite public about your advocacy and in a very hostile environment here in Australia. What has been the reaction, particularly from your staff, who I presume are mostly non-Jewish, and in the demographics, say 18 to 30, who are the most anti-Israel? And also, has there been any backlash or comments from any of your major clients? Because some of those major clients would probably have put out social statements like many other big companies do.
Yeah, so just for a quick little bit of context for people that don't know. So when I left, I decided to start writing a travel diary of my trip and what I would see and experience there. And for some reason, I decided that LinkedIn would be a good place to do that, because that's where if I'd write long form content, that's where I put it. And what ended up happening was, halfway through my trip, this trip started becoming very personal and very emotional, and being on a business networking platform felt like a weird place to be sharing the things that I was crying about on a daily basis, but I was in, and so I just kept going. And what happened was, these pieces have, I haven't looked in the last week, but a week ago, you know, had been viewed over 30,000 times. I had hundreds and hundreds of comments and reactions. I have had dozens and dozens of people message me, and I've had one kind of trolling response on one thing that I posted from one person, and she's a repeated troll. Everything else I've received has been overwhelmingly positive. And I think the benefit of LinkedIn for me personally was, it is mainly not Jewish contacts on there. And I've had so many non-Jewish people reach out to me. I met with 2 people today non-Jewish people who work in my industry who were so thankful for me doing it, who said it's a whole perspective that we don't see, that we don't know, that they've shared it with other people. And those 3 goals that I had at the start, I ended up adding a 4th one at the end, which was advocacy, because I've realized this is actually a really powerful thing that I can do.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, people can connect with you on LinkedIn if they want to and see what you've written. How does that work?
They just got to find me on there and hit connect or follow, and then you can see, I think I wrote 5 or 6 pieces over the 9 days I was there.
And just tell people how to spell your name.
So it's Dan, and my last name is Monheit, Monheit.
Okay, Dan, look, what you've done is a big mitzvah and kol hakavod to you. It sounds like you had quite an amazing experience. That's all we have for now, people, but we'll be bringing you more of these interviews in the coming week. Dan, thank you again. Michael, thanks for joining in, and we look forward to doing a few more of these little videos.
Well done, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, until next time, it's bye from us. Bye for now.
Bye.